Hey, fuckers. This past month, the world has caught up with the show, as we maybe suspected it would. So, as discussed last time, we were talking about facades of conformity, FOCs, or the ways that we ditch our real values to demonstrate that we are in line with systematized ones in order to prevent resource loss at the expense of our own emotional welfare. Having particular state supported opinions about public figures to maintain one's job, for instance. And this month, we deepened the conversation by dipping into the behavior of impression management, perhaps the lesser form of fawking. Impression management refers to the ways we attempt to control our self image to present a favorable face, depending on who that face will be observed by. Here comes the cynicism. Yeah, we all do it. And yes, it is required so we are not feral. But some of us do it more than others. People pleasing with our presented identities to try to grease the wheels of life, especially when that life has been rather rusty and screaming for attention. And sometimes, in some circumstances, it works. So, the problem, impression management, or imp manning, as I call it, is correlated with higher loneliness, low sense of control, and low life satisfaction. Now, it's unclear from the research which comes first, if these factors are the inspiration or the outcome of imp manning. From experience, we suggest the answer is both. A person isn't happy with how things are going socially or practically. They attempt to rectify the problems by being more readily acceptable, and it results in deepening those problems. If you're lonely, pretending to be someone other than yourself will not create connection. If you're feeling out of control, putting your success into the hands of others' appraisals won't create a stronger sense of agency. If you're dissatisfied with life, faking it and hoping that one day you end up making it, it doesn't increase fulfillment in the interim. So, impression management is generally not a strong resolver of issues. Because the other problem is research says impression management is risky, difficult, and often returns negative results. Individuals don't know if they're choosing the right strategy for each person they encounter. Then they don't know if they're executing it correctly. And if deception is detected, it inspires distrust or negative relationship turns. In other words, imp manning requires a custom presentation for every situation. This is stressful, energy reliant, and challenging. And there's no guarantee it will be effective anyways. Massive effort can be poured into trying to control how others see a being, and all the work can make relationships worse. In short, no one likes a try hard, and all the hard trying can be executed incorrectly. The other problem with imp manning is that if a motherfucker is successful, guess what they earn? 1. Long-term imprisonment, sustaining all those efforts and identities indefinitely, which comes with continual stress. See above points. And 2, they are rewarded with more or more intensive unmet needs than ever before. Here's why. The theory of social support tells us people want to help other people, but only if their need is being detected. If they appear somehow lower, in quotes, than the person who might issue the help, then they become a more likely cup to be poured into. Through impression management, though, we usually try to raise ourselves up to appear better off than we really are, because we generally believe this makes us more acceptable. In this way, even if we make ourselves likable through imp manning, we create conditions in which social support doesn't come because we have presented ourselves as unneedy, as equal or greater than our social connections, so that they don't think to offer the support that we need, which ironically has likely inspired the impression management behavior in the first place. Thus, again, decreasing life satisfaction and increasing loneliness, the opposite of what we set out to do. Meaning, impression management is a counterproductive, tenuous, and self brutalizing strategy in many cases. But that's not the end of the story. For this reason, some people choose to go low with impression management methods rather than talking themselves up. In fact, there are several forms of imp manning, and I bet they sound familiar to you from workplaces and other social systems. The ones we spoke about this month were ingratiating, self promoting, intimidating, exemplifying, supplicating, and suppression. A little detail for you, so any of those words matter. Ingratiating is complimenting others or sucking up. Self promoting is highlighting or exaggerating one's self importance in a system. Intimidating is using force or threat of punishment to get what you want. Exemplifying is trying to demonstrate worth by going above and beyond. Supplicating is the strategy of going low, seeming needy, or presenting weakness to elicit help. And suppression is hiding one's real values or emotions. Which tactic an individual chooses to use depends on circumstance. Research says each is more or less viable depending on the power dynamics at play and the likelihood of negative returns, something we uncovered in another paper. So, folks who believe they need help but don't know how to directly ask for it, they might go the passive route and supplicate to demonstrate their neediness, or exaggerate what they're not capable of doing so that less is asked of them. Unfortunately, this strategy and all the other impression management tactics have negative returns as far as how they impact the individual using them. A person who supplicates too much or too thoroughly is admitting that they are inept and may suffer from lower self-esteem as well as a lower self-image in the eyes of others. And people who realize that there are punishments for disagreeing with normative or prevailing mores might use something like suppression to just shut the fuck up about how they really feel regarding an issue. If, say, they've seen their peers get fired for having similar opinions. Or if, say, AI is being used to seek out hate speakers, in quotes, who dissent from governmental sanctioned narratives. Things like that. Just, hypothetically. Speaking to that last point, suppression got its own series of episodes this month for obvious fucking reasons. It comes with side effects of increased emotionality and emotional exhaustion, decreased performance on tasks, impaired memory, and increased health risks sparked from the stressed cardiovascular systems and sustained sympathetic system activation. It's transferable, and suppression tends to flow from the higher ups downward, creating environments of it. It also impairs adult-child relationships and children's social skills. Just some points to note in case following orders or playing along with fascistic regimes seem like the easier roads to wander down. They're not. They're long-term life deleterious, even if they save an ass in the short term. So, fuckers, while we are human beings and everyone needs impression management to be a part of society and socializing, remember the negative returns on monumental energetic investment if this becomes a large part of life. And remember the strong chance of doing it wrong, which can negatively turn peers and abusive supervisors against you anyways. Or at least take a little time to reflect upon the fact that imp manning increases loneliness, decreases sense of control, and increases life dissatisfaction, which may help explain why certain environments have created unpleasant outcomes in your personal happiness, fulfillment, and sense of connection after working very hard to try to secure those things. Facades of conformity and impression management, the easy ways to get along, generally result in a death spiral of hellish experience, especially over long durations of time. And that is why we still suggest having no fox to give. Come learn about all the details from this little summary post, including several research articles that we went through point by point at patreon.com/traumatized motherfuckers. Also, tap into an episode on suppression, the spiral of silence in the United States, a research article published in 2023 about self-censorship taking over American culture with shocking prevalence that got thrown into the mix, as long as you're there. Reminder, workbooks and digital course editions are now streaming there weekly as well. And take solace in knowing whether you actively participate in the community or not, you never have to fuck off to be a part of this project. Take care, watch your imp manning, determine commonly used tactics, and monitor for how it might impact your life, including potential negative returns on emotional and energetic investments. A for effort, more like F for faker, until that pattern is broken and environments of authenticity are created from the self outward. Until we talk again next month. Cheers, y'all. Thanks for being here as no one other than you. Bye-bye.